This is BBC World News. I'm Nuala McGovern. On today's Global, Russia hits back at the US and accuses it of fighting a proxy war against Moscow in Ukraine. It comes after President Zelensky's visit to the US and Washington's further aid pledge that includes a key Patriot missile defense system. We'll hear reaction from Kyiv to their leader's first foreign trip since the beginning of the war. We'll also hear live from the US Secretary of State within the hour. Also coming up on Global, the World Health Organization warns about rising COVID cases in China as hospitals fill up. And the coldest Christmas in 4 decades in parts of the United States as a major winter storm sweeps the country. And also seeing the world through a painter's eyes. We'll talk to David Hockney about his new immersive exhibition. Welcome to the programme. The Kremlin has criticised the latest package of US military aid to Ukraine, accusing the US of fighting a proxy war against Russia. America announced a new aid package to Kyiv, including Patriot missiles to counter Russian missile and also drone attacks. Russia says the missile systems will not prevent it from achieving the goals of its invasion. It comes after Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed Congress in Washington. Our correspondent Hugo Bachega has more from Kyiv. Dr. Isaac Bogosh, thanks to him. Coming up a little later on Global, we're going to be speaking about the US weather. President Joe Biden has been speaking about. It's going to be record-breaking cold temperatures, so we'll get into that. Also, we'll talk about one of the most popular and influential British artists, that's David Hockney. He's pushing the boundaries once again with a new immersive experience of his work. Welcome back to Global on BBC World News. The Kremlin has criticised the latest package of US military aid to Ukraine after President Zelensky's visit to Washington. Moscow says that the US is fighting a proxy war against Russia. The World Health Organization says it is concerned over a surge of COVID cases in China. It has called on Beijing to provide more data and urgently step up its vaccination program. Forecasters say a major winter storm, which is sweeping the US this week, may bring the coldest Christmas in 4 decades to parts of the country. Now, there's already been major snowfall in parts of the US. More than 90 million people in 37 states are set to experience sub-zero temperatures, including places as far south as Texas, prompting warnings from officials. The cold snap could become known as what's called a bomb cyclone. That would be by tomorrow. Well, let's get more from our weather presenter, Matt Taylor. It's nice to hear from him. I want to turn now, however, back to President Putin. Some lines coming in to us. He has been speaking, as we said, and continues to speak there as we see. He has said that Russia wants an end to the war in Ukraine and all armed conflicts end with diplomatic negotiations. He says our goal is not to spin the flywheel of military conflict, but on the contrary, to end this war. We are striving for this. We will continue to strive, he says. We will strive to end this, and the sooner the better, of course. And he did also say that all conflicts end with negotiations and diplomatic negotiations. So we'll begin to see what else is coming out of that statement that he gives. We'll continue bringing them to you right here on BBC World News. Do stay with us on Global if you can. This is BBC World News. I'm Nuala McGovern. On today's Global, Russia hits back at the US and accuses it of fighting a proxy war against Moscow in Ukraine. It comes after President Zelensky's visit to the United States and Washington's further aid pledge, including a key Patriot missile defense system. We'll hear reaction from Kyiv to their leader's first foreign trip since the beginning of the war. And we'll also hear live from the US Secretary of State. That'll be coming up shortly. Also on Global, we'll bring you the story of an Iranian woman imprisoned for defying the government. And the fallen crypto king, Sam Bankman-Fried, arrives in New York to face fraud charges over the collapse of FTX. Plus, Nepo babies. They strike back after a viral magazine cover that targets nepotism. We'll explain what all the commotion is about. It's been 3 months of protests in Iran, which began after the death in custody of a young woman, Mahsa Amini. Thousands have now been arrested, many of them women, and some of those imprisoned report being subjected to torture at the hands of authorities. Families are also often threatened and prevented from speaking out, and the accounts that have emerged paint a grim picture of violent treatment. The BBC's Mariam Afshang has been following one woman's experience. Thanks very much to Mariam there. Well, it's time for our business news now, and Tig is here.
Nuala, thank you very much. Well, the failed cryptocurrency tycoon Sam Bankman-Fried has arrived in New York after his extradition from the Bahamas. The founder of the crypto exchange was accused of stealing billions of dollars from his customers and using them to plug losses in a hedge fund that he also controlled. Bankman-Fried claims he didn't knowingly commit fraud. It is expected, although by no means definite, that he's going to appear in court later today. Well, Samira Hussein is our North America business correspondent, and she joins me now. Samira, do you have any update as to when we might see Sam Bankman-Fried in court? Important lessons to be learned there. In other business today, bankers in New York and London are having their bonuses cut this Christmas. They're expected to be between 30 and 50% lower this year compared to last. Some may receive no bonus at all, according to data from the financial newswire Reuters. And more than 3/4 of British companies have told a survey that the UK's Brexit deal with the EU has made it more difficult for them to increase sales and grow their business. The British Chambers of Commerce has called on the UK government to seek a supplementary deal with Brussels. And that is your business here on Global. Back to you now, Nuala.
Thanks so much, Tig. Still to come here on Global, we're going to take a look at nepotism in Hollywood after an influential US magazine declares 2022 the year of the Nepo baby. Welcome back to Global on BBC World News. The Kremlin has criticised the latest package of US military aid to Ukraine after President Zelensky's visit to Washington. Moscow says the US is fighting a proxy war against Russia. Let's turn to Israel now, where the formation of a new government has been declared, and it has been called the most right-wing in its history. Far-right parties, including a leader with a conviction for racist incitement and supporting a terrorist group, will partner with Prime Minister-elect Benjamin Netanyahu. The parties strongly support Jewish settlers in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. That includes in Hebron, where violence has spiked since last month's election. The BBC's Middle East correspondent, Tom Bateman, has been meeting people living in the city, including one Palestinian family who've suffered repeated attacks on their home. Fiona, so good to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us from the FT. You can check out her piece on socio-economic levels. And we're keeping an eye for the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, as well. Stay with us for that. This is BBC World News. I'm Nuala McGovern. On today's Global, Russia hits back at the US and its new aid package for Ukraine. Vladimir Putin says the military aid will just prolong the war and that Russia will find an antidote. A comes after President Zelensky's visit to the United States and Washington's offer to provide a key Patriot missile defence system. We have a special report from the front line in Ukraine as we follow one soldier fighting for his country at a heavy cost.
And we will keep fighting until the end. It's our land. It's our blood.
The coldest Christmas in 4 decades in parts of the United States as a major winter storm sweeps across the country. And seeing the world through an artist's eyes, we talk to David Hockney about his new immersive exhibition. Russia has criticised Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to the United States, accusing the US of fighting a proxy war with Moscow. In a speech, President Putin said a new Patriot missile defence system, which the US has agreed to supply to Ukraine, would simply prolong the war and that Russia would find an antidote. It was part of a new $1.8 billion aid package announced by DC, and we'll have more on that shortly. But before that, 10 months on, since the start of the conflict, Ukrainian forces have regained some areas from Russia. But families across the country are without power because of the attacks, and some are without family members killed in the conflict. Our correspondent Quintin Somerville and camera journalist Darren Conway joined him at an undisclosed location near Kupiansk in the country's east, where fighting continues amid appalling winter conditions. How lovely to watch that with Katie speaking to David Hockney. Do stay with us on BBC World News if you can. Focus on Africa will be coming up next with Peter Okwache standing in the wings, and I'll be back with you in half an hour.
Hello. In Europe, the coldest in the run-up to Christmas is going to be across parts of Scandinavia.